Hello, welcome to the 15th episode of BeekTalk. This is the weekly live stream show that is focused on helping you learn about beekeeping. I am not in the studio today. I'm not in my office. I am in the kitchen where I do some bottling for honey. This is actually in my house. This is a kitchen that we have inspected and certified for food use. We don't really cook in here. It kind of just sits around until an emergency happens or I need to bottle some honey. So here we are. Today's topic, we are talking about bottling honey. A whole bunch of different questions I get around the honey crop. Everyone thinks that you become a beekeeper and immediately have to start dealing with bottling honey. Hey, Tim. Oh, and shout out to my kitchen. Yeah. Like I said, today's topic is bottling honey, and everyone has questions about it. It's not something that first-year beekeepers usually have to deal with. It's something that happens, you only really get your honey crop in your second or third or fourth year as a beekeeper. But I've been beekeeping for 15 years, so I'm always dealing with honey now, and I have to bottle some up for some clients. And I figured this would be a great opportunity for you to learn a little bit about how the process is done. In the 13th or the 12th episode of BeekTalk, we talked about the crush and strain method for extracting honey. And that's a great process for folks who are starting out, who only have a few colonies. Great method for honey extraction. But what I left out of that conversation was how to bottle the honey. And that's what we're covering today. So I'm here in my kitchen, like I said, and I also went through a little extra effort to be like a cooking show, and I set up a above camera. Hello. So one of the things that I want to talk about is I've covered my table with parchment paper, and I do this. Oh, can you see me? There we go. I cover the table with parchment paper because bottling honey or doing anything with honey is very sticky. And when you're doing it in your own home, you need to have a plan for keeping things clean. Honey is a food, and bottling and extracting honey is a food process. So even though we keep bees outside and bees are insects out in the rain and the dirt and the mud, the honey that we extract is very much food, and we have to treat it that way. So I'm wearing an apron. I cover the table with parchment paper. You can use plastic or anything like that. But I would recommend that you do not do this on your main kitchen table and not have any kind of covering, because cleanup is definitely something you want to have in mind. When I extract honey and when I bottle, I cover pretty much all the surfaces. I put plastic wrap on the handles for the sink. I put plastic on the floor. I didn't do that today because I'm only going to be bottling 4 gallons of honey, which is not too much. But you definitely want to keep cleanup in mind. So it's really nice that when I'm done with bottling today, I can just peel up this parchment paper and throw it out and not have puddles of honey to clean up. Don't get me wrong, below the parchment paper, somehow honey's still going to get there. And there's still going to be honey on the fridge and the sink and all over the place. So I am still going to have to clean up, but putting down something on the surface makes it a lot easier. Yeah, Tim is happy for my 2 angles. Yeah, I'm putting together a cooking show today. Tim is tuning in from Pennsylvania, and I'd like to hear where you're from. I'm going to have about a few more minutes of talking that I'm going to do, and then I'm just going to be bottling honey. So if you're a beekeeper and have a different way that you do it, or you're a larger operation, I'd love to hear how you bottle honey. So let me think about our next operation here. In the crush and strain BeekTalk, I probably showed you what a gate bucket is. And this gate bucket is probably 10 years old. It was original when I got all of my extraction equipment. And basically, what it is a 5-gallon bucket that has a little spigot on the front. Boop, boop, boop. So what we do is we fill it up with honey, and we can use this gate here to control the flow of honey going into the bottles. Now, I can just dump the honey into here, but there's probably wax or little bits of bees or something in there. So it's a great idea to use one of these micron filters. It looks like this. It doesn't tell me how many microns it is, but it's not very fine. It's actually the coarsest that they have. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to put this filter right in here, and then we have our bucket. So when I pour in the honey, woo, goes in the top. Here is the level where the filter is. And then once it goes through the filter, it builds up in the chamber below, which I can use to bottle my honey. When I go back to my split screen here, I also have a platform. I have another smaller bucket that I'm going to use to put this on. That way I have a little bit of room underneath the gate where I can fit my jars. I also have my jars cleaned. Let me talk about that for a moment. I get these jars available. They're available many places. This style is called Queen Line, which is a very traditional jar to put honey in, aside from the traditional bare bones basic like mason ball jar. This one holds 1 pound. I also have half-pound jars that I'm going to be bottling today. There's still a little bit of water residue in these jars because they did just come out of the dishwasher. Some folks will just use the jars straight from the box from the store. You can do that. I'm sure it's fine. However, I believe that there's some kind of residues on the jar from manufacturing. And like I said, since honey is a food process, I want to make sure everything's clean. So I took these jars out of the box, put them in the dishwasher with a sanitizing cycle. And then they came out and I put them on these trays here, ready to bottle. So I have not touched the inside of these jars and don't plan on doing so. You can purchase these jars at your beekeeping supply store. Man Lake has a whole inventory of them. You want to purchase these jars and calculate how many gallons and pounds that you're going to be bottling before you heat up your honey. Before you even start this process, you want to make sure you have your jars and the corresponding lids. Like I said, beekeeping supplies, candle supplies, or canning supply stores. Sometimes brew supply stores also carry a variety of jars. Like I said, this style that I use is a basic for honey. You can also use plastic bottles. Those are a lot easier to ship than glass jars. Shipping glass is expensive, so try and find a distributor near you that you can drive to, have them put them in your car, and that way you know they're safe, because sometimes shipping is expensive or the jars break during transport, which is a big time bummer. I like using glass. That's just me. That's what my clients recommend and prefer. So I use glass. It gives a good feel. If you're keeping bees yourself, you should be charging a premium for your honey. And that being said, plastic doesn't really offer the perceived value to the people purchasing the honey as a nice solid glass jar does. So that's why I use glass. And let me check up here. I got Josh checking in, and I have Carly saying hello. Hi, everybody. Let me know where you're tuning in from. And yeah, like I said, today's topic is bottling honey. So I think that it's time we talk about the honey in general. Behind me, where's my camera? Over here, that bucket is my bucket of honey. When I do extraction, it's a long day for me and everybody involved. So I just dump the honey into buckets. Sometimes it's strained or pre-strained, but that's why I added the filter to my bucket. I let the honey crystallize in there. Honey naturally crystallizes. I'm sure you know that. I can talk about that more in a bit. But I have this metal band around the bucket, and what that does is I plug it in, and it basically melts the whole bucket of honey. It can get pretty hot, so you don't want to denature the honey as you're doing it, but definitely recommend investing in one of those band heaters if you are at the volume where you're storing in buckets. So I have the honey heating up. I have my gate bucket ready to go. So I pulled this paper towel out of the gate of the bucket. This is basically because I want everything to be dry. Honey can ferment if it has added moisture. So if we're not careful when we're doing the honey process, we can actually add a significant amount of moisture to the honey. So when I extract, everything's dry. This bucket is dry. What I don't have control over is the moisture in the jar. But luckily, it's only a drop or two. And so when a pound of honey, it shouldn't really interfere with it too much. So I have my gate. I have a filter I'm just going to get rid of for right now. Woo! I had to move all my plants, guys. So here is this. I'm going to the top view. 1 second. Woo, how professional. All right, I'm going to unplug my band heater and bring over my bucket of honey. And I'm going to just slip off the band. Woo, it's still hot, but this is what the band is, and it goes right around the bucket. This is a great thing to have around. They are a little pricey, but I think that it's fully worth it for my operation. Another thing I do is when I I put the honey in a container. You can't read this, unfortunately, but it says spring 2019. 2020 was a bad honey year for me. So I'm actually still working through my honey inventory from 2019. Another thing to keep in mind, again, this is operations. I'll be washing my hands all the time in gloves. I'm going to glove up. I have my honey melted in this first. Next step is to pour it into the water, which is actually a really satisfying look. So before I put on my extra glove, let me comments. I have some friends from the Delaware Water Gap. Oh, nice. So here it is. This honey has been in here since 2019. That was a really good honey flow for us here in the Pocono Mountains of Pennsylvania. But woo! You see that? So the honey's nice and liquidy. And this honey, it looks like it was already filtered. So our filtering in the gate bucket here is just going to be an addition, which is really nice. Here's a really good pro tip. Before you pour your honey in, make sure your gate bucket is closed and sealed. This gate is a little leaky, which, I'm sure you'll see some more of, but you definitely want to make sure this is closed before you pour the honey in. And now, keep in mind, one of these buckets of honey weighs about 55 to 60 pounds. So I'm going to do some groans. Now is the moment of truth, folks. Woo. All right. I can tell I already have honey on my sleeves. Since it's already warm, it's kind of pretty, which is great. Whew. Keep around a spout to assist me with keeping things clean and neat. Get out of the way. Now I have my honey dripping through the filter, It is going to take a couple of minutes. The honey's not as warm as I originally would have hoped. Let me actually keep it down here so we can see it. One other thing that you can do, if you see that your micron filter is having some trouble, you can actually use your scraper and gently scrape the surface of the filter. And this removes any little tiny debris, any crystals. This honey actually might even be a little crystallized still, which is not too good, but all it does is add some agitation to coerce the honey down into the bottom of the bucket. Whoop. Do this. I think it's time for another round. Ugh. All right. I'm going to take off my gloves. Now I think it's time that I move this up here. Whew. And let's go back to our normal view. Okay. All right. I just want to catch up on some things. I have Heather saying hello from the Delaware River. Hello. How's Todd doing? No bees yet? We'll get him up. We'll get him up with some bees. And then we have Jeremy. That honey looks amazing. 19 was a good honey year. It was a good honey year. Thank God, because 2020 was not a good honey year for me. I don't know where you folks are based, but if you extracted honey the past couple of years, I'm curious. Did you have a year that was not as good as other years? I'm curious. So we have our honey in our bucket. We have our jars. We have Amanda saying hello. Hello, Amanda. Thanks for watching. All right. One thing that we need. We have our jars. We have our honey. We need lids. You can purchase, there's tons of varieties of lids. Let me just open this up here. All right. Tons of varieties of lids. These are plastic lids that have a insert on the inside. You can probably see the safety seal warning. These are available from one vendor. You'll see when I bottle 8 ounces that I have gold lids for those. Different vendors have different lids that they offer. Another thing they need is a paper towel or a damp rag, because unfortunately this is sticky and not every pour is a great pour. So you need something to be able to wipe the jars with. So give me a second to get this moistened. Whew. Yeah, bottling honey is actually not my favorite part of the beekeeping process. I know that it's the favorite part of a lot of folks because it's really where you get to see the fruits of your labor and the bees' labor. But for me, boy, oh boy, it's way too sticky. Anyway, if I don't have any other questions, what I'll do is I'm going to go to our overhead view. You can see me. I got my laptop. I'm going to put on a pair of gloves. Over here, I have our bucket of honey. And I can turn on my light. Bucket of honey, jars, lids, damp rag, all ready to go. And the last thing I need is a place to put the jars once they're full of honey. So I actually put them right back in the original box they came in. So I'll put this right here. Are we ready to start bottling, folks? Now, I think for the most part, I'm done with my bottling honey spiel. So if you have any beekeeping questions or anything that you think is good to add to our discussion today on bottling honey and honey products, ooh, I should have gotten a much closer up camera to show you this. 1 second. Woo! Just like that. I have my honey. Oh, you're up there. Cheers. So I put on my lid, give it a good seal, and that is the stuff that we are looking for. This is a beautiful golden color honey. It still has some air bubbles in it, which will work their way out, but this is ready to go. If you are selling honey to clients who are reselling that honey, you need to be bottling in a kitchen that is approved for food. So this here is actually, it is in my house, but it is licensed and inspected for a food use. So you'll have to go to your municipality to figure out what the rules are around that. If you just have a couple of hives and you are bottling honey and selling it to a few friends or giving it away, you don't necessarily need to worry about having an inspected kitchen. I'm sure the Department of Agriculture is going to disagree with me on that, but not every person who's selling eggs or selling stuff that they grow has an inspected kitchen, because it is a barrier and it is expensive. But as long as you are with your friends and selling it to people who are not going to try and sue you, then I think that you will be good. Okay, this is a good question here. I have my nephew Ben actually asking, how do you crystallize honey? Or he says criticize, but I think he means crystallize honey. Honey naturally crystallizes on its own. If you have a hive that dies, their honey is still going to be good in the combs. The only thing is that it's going to become solid. It's not going to be this runny liquid. Remember that I had to melt this honey to make it this consistency. So you don't actually need to do anything to the honey to make it crystallize. All you have to do is wait. Some honey will not crystallize. Other honey will crystallize very quickly and almost does not want to be a liquid. And that really just depends on the nectar source that the bees are hitting to get that honey. So this spring honey doesn't crystallize as much as the fall honey. That's a usual standard. But there are other products available, like creamed honey, which fully take advantage of the nature that honey is going to crystallize anyway. So I figured someone was going to ask me about that. So this is a jar of, where are we? Up here. This is a jar of creamed honey starter. Basically what it is crystallized honey, but the crystals have been crushed to be very small and actually round. So think of, instead of the rock salt that you add to your driveway, it is table salt that's nice and round and small. When honey naturally crystallizes, it is these big chunks, and it's not as pleasing to eat as a lot of people would like. So what the beekeeper does is knows that the honey is going to crystallize. So what they'll do is take some crystallized honey, use a mortar and pestle to crush the crystals, make them smaller, and then use that starter, this basically, and mix it with liquid honey or runny honey, this stuff. And in doing that, you kind of decide for the honey what the crystals are going to be like. So instead of the crystals naturally forming big and coarse, we are deciding that it's going to be small and round and kind of smooth. So instead of the honey being jagged, it actually is kind of creamy. And that's how it gets the name, creamed honey. This is a premium product, so if you know a beekeeper who's selling it, it's probably going to be a couple more bucks than their regular jar of honey. But that's all right, because you're not going to have to deal with crystallized honey anymore. That honey naturally is not going to crystallize. Or I should say it already is, but smaller. Jeremy says, hey, Eric, what is the temperature that honey can be heated without degradation? That is a good question. There's a little controversy around what temperatures are what. If you can keep your honey below 110 degrees, it's not pasteurized or anything like that, and it's still technically considered raw honey. So at 110 degrees, honey will decrystallize, it'll melt, but it's not going to get denatured. Inside this jar is thousands of little tiny healthy bacteria, healthy like enzymes and little bits of pollen and things like that. So we actually want to keep all of that alive. That's the good stuff that we want from honey. So yeah, that's definitely the thing. You want to keep your honey below 110 degrees. Commercial beekeepers can't always abide by that, so they might sell pasteurized honey, and it's actually probably not labeled any different. Pasteurized honey is going to say that it's honey, and the difference is unpasteurized honey is usually sold as raw. So you can buy raw milk if you have a neighbor who has cows or something like that. They might sell raw milk, and you've heard that it has some bacteria and stuff in it. All of that is natural. You just want to make sure that the sourcing is good. So if you trust your neighbor, then you can drink that raw milk. But as far as honey is concerned, if you are talking to a beekeeper and buying their honey, more than likely it's really good stuff. I'm a big advocate for buy honey from beekeepers who keep bees in your area, and that's one really good way to help save the bees. I did a phone interview this morning for a blog, and I was talking about my business and what I do, and she was asking me all kinds of questions. And of course, my business is focused on beekeepers and teaching beekeeping and selling honeybees. And she said, yeah, that's great, but what if you don't want to be a beekeeper? And that's pretty reasonable. So she said, what if you don't want to be a beekeeper? What can you do to help the bees? And I said, first thing you can do is buy honey from a beekeeper and pay the full price. Right now in the country, we have a lot of issues with, we call it funny honey. It's honey that's brought in overseas. And it can be labeled that it's from Argentina or something like that, but really it was harvested in China and then brought to Argentina and then brought back to Thailand, and it's traveled the world. And in those travels, pretty much every person who touches it is going to mix in some other additives. So instead of this pure raw honey that I have in my hand here, you might have 25% natural honey and then some yellow colored rice syrup or corn syrup. So I'll probably do a whole conversation about funny honey. If you were listening to our Dr. Goodrich Beak Talk at the end of January, we talked a little bit about funny honey, but we didn't get in too much detail. But that is a little touch on funny honey. The other things that you can do if you are not really interested in becoming a beekeeper, but you do want to help the bees, really, you can do a lot in the garden. If you have autonomy, ooh, I'm out of lids. I got to grab some more. If you are in an area where you have control over your lawn, I give you full permission. Let me go to main camera for a second. If you have control over your lawn, you have my full permission to not cut the lawn until you can make wishes with the dandelions. The only exception is if you have a homeowners association or your municipality has specific rules about maintaining curbside lawns. If you have those requirements, definitely stick to them. My recommendation does not hold up in court. But if you have a big lawn, don't spray pesticides, don't spray herbicides, let it kind of run wild. Crabgrass, clover, dandelions are all good for the soil, for the ecosystem, for the pollinators. And that's one of those things that humans, we have full control over. And it's very easy to do to help the bees. People don't really know this, but out of all the crops in the country that are irrigated, that means that we water, we add water to those crops. Lawn is by far the most acres. We water the most acres of lawn than we do any other crop. So all the corn that we have in the country, all the soybeans, all that stuff is actually less than the amount of lawn that we take care of. Could you imagine if we transitioned all those lawns into pollinator plantings, or at least just let them run wild with the natural clover and dandelions that already want to exist in those ecosystems? It'd be a great thing for the bees. Oh, we have Joy signing on saying hi. Hey, Joy, good to have you, as always. Joy is a big fan of the show, and I'm happy to have her here. Like I said, today's topic is bottling honey. I'm already getting sticky. Let me see if I can adjust this. Yeah, oh, I think I like this shot a little bit more. So I have my honey, and I'm moving it right along. Up here, I want to just check on my container. I have to add a little bit more honey to keep this thing full and going. Ooh. It's a 5-gallon bucket, but I only think I'm bottling 4 gallons of honey today. Whoop. All right, so that's gonna filter down. If we have any other questions or talking points, I'd love to get your ideas. Whew. Got creamed honey, and I'm just gonna go right about and keep on bottling. Like I said, this is not my favorite part of beekeeping. I'd rather be out in the field with the bees, but it certainly helps pay for the bees, so it's definitely something I got to keep doing. Woo! Sometimes you get a jar that's a little too full, which is a little difficult to deal with. Just keep a spatula around. You can use your rag to wipe off any extra. Okay. We are just coming upon the split season here in the Poconos. So in about another month, our honey flow will start, which is a great thing because that means the season has begun. And then a few months later, in about July, we are usually extracting here in the Poconos. And that is when I fill up these buckets to be bottled at a later date. Yeah, this is the stuff we got today. A nice golden color. Spring honey is usually light in color. Fall honey is usually dark in color, but that is just a rule of thumb and not a standard. So things definitely can change, and certain plants bloom at certain times, and every plant has a different color nectar and pollen. So the more advanced you get as a beekeeper, and really I should say the more you study plants too, the better you'll get at identifying what color honey is from what plants. Different plants crystallize, their honey crystallizes at different rates. So yeah, a lot to learn, a lot to think about these bees. If I find a person who's really good at identifying the different honeys and the different pollen, I'll probably have them come on the show and talk about it, because that's something I'd like to learn some more about too. Woo. Carly is asking, do you wait to bottle at a certain time? Some beekeepers will bottle right as they're extracting. So they'll extract, filter it, and bottle it all in one go. They might be doing this because they only have a couple of colonies. And if you're only getting 4 gallons of honey for the year, you might as well put it in bottles, right? I can extract gallons and gallons at a time. And if the honey crystallizes in the jar, it is a big time bummer to try and get it uncrystallized. So I try my best to wait until the customer wants honey for me to bottle it. So I bottle everything on demand. And Christmas is a big time for buying and selling and giving honey. So around December, I'm doing a lot of bottling. Now, all the extra that I went through and bottled in January is gone. So I'm going to bottle now. I'll probably bottle again in April and May, and probably every month, because I have people who want honey, which is great. I'm happy. I appreciate everyone who's buying my honey, because it is certainly helping keep the bees happy and healthy and allowing me to do these educational talks for you. So if you like the show, you can be sure to like and subscribe the page for Blossom and Buzz Beekeeping and for Mite Fight. I also have suggested products on my Amazon page, on my Blossom and Buzz Beekeeping page. So if you go on blossombuzzbees.buzz and click onto my suggested products page, there are a bunch of different books that I recommend you read, whether you want to be a beekeeper or just learn a little bit more. That's a great place to start. Other things are other things on that page. I have my blog posts where I explain different topics that usually run in conjunction with these Beak Talks. So coming up soon, I'm going to do a talk about how I build my nuke boxes, which I get a lot of questions about. So if you go on blossombuzzbees.buzz, you can see I have a cut list for when I do that Beak Talk. And then, of course, if you want to purchase this honey, I sell at Pocono Soap in Stroudsburg. So if you're in the Stroudsburg area and are on Main Street and North 7th Street, you can pick up my honey from Pocono Soap. And Pocono Soap also ships. So you can go to pocono-soap.com and find my honey on their product listing. I do not ship honey because I'm not really set up for it, but Pocono Soap can send it out to you anywhere in the country. So definitely, if you're listening and you're not from the Pocono area, that's the spot where you want to go to get some of the sweet stuff. Yep, I am almost done bottling 2 gallons, so I am going to have to reset soon and continue filling up the hopper, I want to say, but it's really the gate bucket. and get over some more jars and keep bottling. But when I'm done with these couple more jars, I think I'm going to end the Beak Talk because we are running out of time. I try and keep the show at about a half hour, and we're already at 40 minutes. So I appreciate everybody who's watching and who has been liking and sharing the video. This has been a more of a general audience kind of show. Usually I get a little in the weeds with talking about bees. So some non-beekeepers are sometimes left in the dust. But I think this show is good for anybody, really. Here we go. Yeah, a gate bucket. Beautiful, beautiful thing. I also have a link to these gate buckets on my suggested products page. So if you make your way to my website and want to find and purchase one of these gate buckets and filters, I have a link on the page there. And if you use any of those links that I have on my website, I get a kickback from Amazon. Unfortunately, we know Amazon is way too big to try and compete with. So if you can't beat them, join them, right? Who do we have? Oh, Joy. Joy is saying, usually I put it in a gallon jugs and it frequently crystallizes in the jug. The real pain to liquefy it, it is. Give me 1 second. It's a pain to liquefy. Now I plan on bottling immediately. A lot easier to liquefy in the bottle. Any suggestions? I do not like melting the already bottled honey when it's crystallized. That's a bummer for me to do. What I plan on doing this year is actually building a little box. What some folks will do is they'll actually retrofit a fridge, and instead of keeping it cold, they set it to go to about 105 degrees. And then you can bottle all your honey, let it crystallize, and then when you're ready, you have clients or folks who are ready to pick up some honey from you, you can take the whole case or the whole bucket, put it in that chamber or the retrofitted fridge at 100, 105, 10 degrees, and overnight or in 2 nights, it'll all liquefy. So if you find a solution for that, something similar, I think bottling right away might be a great solution, especially if you only have a couple hives, like I know you do. So thanks for the question. I'm hoping that I can produce a lot of honey this year and do a bit more volume. So maybe I'll bottle once a month and be able to sell it before it crystallizes, especially during the summer months. In the summer months, honey, you could even, what I heard that you can do during like July, August, when it's really hot, just put the case of honey in your car and let it get the hot car challenge. Your hot car can certainly get above 105 degrees, not at 120. I know some cars, if we're in Arizona, that story is different. But here in the Poconos, your hot car is only going to get to about 120 degrees. Still really hot, but not so incredibly hot that it'll fry your honey. If you leave it in the car for just a day or two, it'll probably liquefy and you can pull it before it gets really too hot. And then Joy's also saying, I put jars in sheet pan at the oven at 110. Yeah, that is a great way to do it. The issue I've encountered is some of these new ovens don't have a dehydrate function. So their base temperature is 175. And that's a little too hot for these plastic PET lids. And, that's a lot of fluctuation. So, jars can crack and stuff like that. But if your oven gets to 110 and can stay at it, or if you can figure out how to prop the door open so it just gets warm but not too hot, that is a great solution. That bath, the sheet pan with the bath of water, is a great way to prevent it from getting above 212, because no matter what, the water is going to want to evaporate before the honey can get hotter. So that is your safety mechanism to prevent the honey from getting to, 300 degrees inside this jar and then cracking and exploding. I don't know. Oh, sticky. I don't know of that happening, but fluids do expand. And expand when they get hot. Water's different, but water's also very special to us. But I think that's the deal. Are there any more questions that we have about honey extraction before I get so sticky to the table here? Anyway, I want to thank you for listening and joining the show. I do this show every Tuesday around 4 o'clock. And you can look at my back catalog of these shows on my Facebook pages at Blossom and Buzz Beekeeping or Might Fight. Or if you go on YouTube, I archive all of these episodes on Might Fight's YouTube channel. So you can see them. I don't get a lot of views there, but it's definitely a good place for you to go back and look to see what we talked about. And I'm always taking suggestions for the shows. If you are a beekeeper, or think you have something that you can contribute to the show, I'd love to have you as a guest. And yeah, in the meantime, you can check out my website, blossombuzzbees.buzz, and check out any of my affiliate links. Like I said, I have a link to the gate bucket and the screen and the filter. You can also check out suggested reads. I'm currently working on a class, like a program for beekeeping, where it'll be a 4-course program. And when you complete the course, you should have all the information you need to find success in beekeeping with your first 2 years with bees. So folks who are not sure if beekeeping is for them, I have a course that fully outlines what to expect with honeybees. So after taking the first course, you'll know that beekeeping is for you. And you'll also have a general baseline knowledge about honeybee biology and the history of beekeeping. And then the second course goes a lot more in depth about physically keeping bees, where to set up your hives and things like that. And then, of course, I'll have the third and fourth courses that talk about management practices, approaches, things like that. So I have some good things coming. Hopefully, I'll have the first course of that program done by the end of the month. So folks who are interested can start taking it then. And I'm expecting to have the whole program complete by August. So if you're looking at starting bees this year or next year, that course will be the spot to go. But of course, that'll all be available on my website, blossombuzzbees.buzz. So since I have no other questions, I'm going to end today's episode. I want to thank everybody again for watching, and happy beekeeping.